Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a big proponent of the Guard and Reserve having served in the Army Reserve, the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps Reserve, and having deployed twice in combat in the Marine Corps Reserve. My fundamental concern is this, that we are in an environment of tremendous fiscal pressures, and I think that defense is going to have a target on its back in these coming debates. And I think Secretary of Defense, former Secretary of Defense Gates, I think expressed before the Armed Services Committee on a number of occasions his concern about the trajectory of costs, the growing personnel cost relative to acquisition cost, and if it is not corrected, will we in fact become a hollow force over time, as some of our NATO allies have become. And so I think that from my view, one of the solutions in this equation is the Guard and Reserve, that we know that the personnel costs are greatly reduced with the Guard and Reserve relative to active units with the same capability, retaining that capability. And so it is my view that we need to look at restructuring our military with emphasis in the Guard and Reserve. The fact is today, we don't have the kind of peer competitor, we don't want one, that we did during the Cold War that required a very large standing military. We're not going to be doing another Iraq and Afghanistan. I think the former Secretary of Defense said it well, that if, I think in a speech before West Point, words to the effect, if another general came to me and said we ought to invade, pacify and administer another country, and tell him, I think, words to the effect he was nuts. We're not going down that road again. I think Yemen and Somalia are the template for the future. It's more counterterrorism, more lighter footprint, more special operations. So I just think that we need to retain this capability, and the only way to retain this capability under the kind of fiscal pressures that we have is a greater emphasis in the Guard and Reserve components of the United States military. And General McKinley, could you respond to that?
Thanks, Congressman Coffman. After every major war in the 20th century, the Guard and Reserve was put back on the shelf. My intuition tells me that we're going to have to argue very strenuously in front of our services to make the case that you just made. We are but one vote in councils that are decided mostly on Title X issues. We've just started making our case on the value proposition, but you've said it better than I could say it for sure. We are here to tell you that we believe we are the answer to America's security needs in a time of fiscal constraint, and we're willing to put our forces on the line operationally, their capability, their equipment, and their leadership to make that case in front of the American people.
You know, I think there are within our force structure, there's the expeditionary components that are necessary to retain on active duty, but it is my position that we need to expand, in this restructuring, we need to look at expanding the Guard and Reserve because it's the only way that the United States can maintain its military capability given the fiscal pressures that we have. And I think that we could do that certainly without in any way sacrificing the national security interests of the United States. But if we in fact go in with making cuts that simply reduced in strength without doing the restructuring I've talked about, we will compromise our capability. And I'm very concerned about that. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.